You can stick around and watch our deliberation and decision, or you can call Community and Neighborhood Services tomorrow in the morning and they will let you know the results. These meetings are streamed online live, recorded, and available to view on the city's YouTube channel. So if our board has no objections with our agenda, will our clerk please read our first item?
Yes, the first application is for 493 West 32nd Street, application number 22.07Z. Kirk Koreski is requesting a special exception to provide reasonable accommodation to persons with disabilities at his property located at 493 West 32nd Street. He would like to operate a residential treatment center for persons with disabilities at this property that was previously used as a nursing facility. The Board of Appeals can approve this request if certain conditions are found to exist. 39-2.09, 39-9.10, and 39-12.12D6.
All right, thank you. And I see we have somebody at our podium now. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you guys today. My name is Kirk Koreska. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Renew Behavioral Health. We're an organization that's actually home-based out of Lakewood, New Jersey. Our primary business is behavioral health treatment. We offer psychiatric and substance abuse treatment coast to coast. We identified the opportunity at the property in question to be able to take the existing nursing home that has not been in operation for some time and convert it over to a residential addiction treatment center. What I'd like to do is kind of describe a little about what our operations are going to be, because I think that has always become some of the primary issues or primary concerns. I know y'all were probably provided a probably more than significant amount of information about the use and demand and need of substance abuse and mental health treatment in the state of Michigan and nationally. So I'm not going to kind of revisit that, because if I did, y'all eventually want to go home and see your families and eat, because we'd be here till tomorrow. So that really is not my mission.
That said,
yes.
Thank you for supplying it, because there's no such thing as too much information when it comes to this. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I exist and live in a world of behavioral health that is continuing to escalate in demand. I mean, that is just a fact. When I entered this space in 1990, there was 20 million people at any given time needed residential addiction treatment, and less than 3% were getting it, right? In 2020, coming out of COVID, 2022 actually, over 40 million people are needing residential addiction treatment, and still only less than 3% are getting it. Right. So it isn't an argument of demand. It's not an argument of need. I would challenge anybody on this board to pick up a newspaper or open your tablet anytime and go a full week without reading another article about overdose issues or mental health issues or whatever it happened to be. So it's really not about that. It really, for me, it's been my life mission to make access to care available to what I like to say are my people. I'm a recovering man. I've been in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous for 38 years, and so this is my mission. I've worked in this industry for over 30 years. I've worked in every facet of behavioral health you can imagine, from residential addiction to outpatient to inpatient. I've run psychiatric hospitals. I've had eating disorder programs. I've had methadone programs. I've had whatever the gap was needed. I tried to involve myself in organizations that provided care. This particular project, we're proposing a voluntary admission residential facility that will house 86 beds. This will be adult coeducational. It will be a for-profit organization. Our funding will come primarily by way of commercial insurance. We do intend to partner with the state of Michigan and the managed Medicaid book of business that exist in the state. Just for a little background, about 2% of all people who are on Medicaid are covered by what's called state Medicaid. The rest are covered by managed Medicaid, which is your commercial payers who partner with the state to manage that book of business. And so when we talk about the 3% that are getting it, less than 97% that aren't, the magical question that always comes up is, why aren't they getting help? What is the barrier? And for many, many years, there was insurance barriers that would prevent people from accessing care. There was limitations on healthcare plans. There was an exclusion many times for behavioral health that did not allow people to get psychiatric or addiction help. That all changed about 15 or 10 years ago now with the act, the Parity Act that passed, that allowed healthcare insurance, your medical plans, to then mirror your behavioral health plans, which allowed people to start seeking care. It was great. We saw some great momentum. We saw some pickup in people accessing services. We ran into COVID. where the access actually went up to about 12%, and we saw some great opportunity. COVID hit and immediately dropped back down. What we saw coming out of COVID was about over 50% of the residential beds in this country went away. Operators couldn't afford to stay open, so they closed. So again, demand increases, now services are decreasing. So our organization has committed ourselves to finding locations and communities where we feel we can partner with the community to provide these services. Now, I'm going to describe a little of what we do, and hopefully I'll alleviate some of the questions, but I'm happy to answer any kind of questions you may have or the audience may have. A voluntary admission facility, these are not court mandated or court directed or post-release programs. That's not what we do. These are programs where people are seeking help. They voluntarily sign in. We utilize their health care insurance as a way of reimbursing our facility. Whatever the insurance plan to the patient, that's their financial responsibility, but we work with every insurance company to provide that care. We do have a percentage of unfunded care that we've committed ourselves to as an organization for those who don't have health care insurance, but definitely have the need, definitely have the demand and no access. As an organization, again, we've committed ourselves. Our facility is staffed 24 hours a day with nursing and clinical care. We have a medical director, psychiatrist, and medical doctor who oversees our operations. Our program essentially runs from the moment they wake up in the morning. We feed them, we take care of them all throughout the day. In the evening, we go to our support groups. We take care of them in the evening where they're supervised throughout the night. Our facilities are contained, secured facilities. And I say that, many times people think I say that so to keep our clients in. That's really not the motive. The motive is to watch what's from the outside coming in. Our commitment to these patients is to make this a very safe place. The nature of alcoholism and the nature of addiction is to find something outside of you to fix something inside of you. That's what addiction is. And so as people are beginning to detox, as anxiety goes up, as depression goes up, as all these things are going up and they don't have that access to drugs or whatever they were using, the natural reaction is panic. And so they want to go find it. Our job is to make it a safe place where we don't have it. And so we can get through the moment, we can get through the detox, we can engage these people in kind of the life that I've been blessed to live for the last 38 years. So the program itself, average length of stay is going to run about 6 weeks. We intend to open outpatient programs and kind of a hub and spoke model so that when people discharge from our program, they'll be able to go to ongoing outpatient counseling in their neighboring communities. We do believe we're going to draw a significant number of people from this market. We definitely see the demand in Grand Rapids and around the Michigan, the whole entire Michigan area. We do intend to have a national recruitment campaign for patients, which will include our internet campaign as well as what I call shoe leather or business-to-business campaign, where we're trying to acquire our clients. Our primary mission here really is to partner with your community. Our primary mission is to offer services to your community, to ensure that there's an opportunity for your community to address whatever addiction or whatever mental health issue they have going on, able to then return back to the community, back to their jobs, and back to their families. I think what we've all seen coming out of COVID, as I said earlier, was an increase in drug and alcohol use, an increase in depression, increase in some of the psychiatric disorders, but also what we're seeing is an increase in broken families. We're seeing an increase in incarcerations. We're seeing all of the negative things that occur as a result of untreated care we're now experiencing. So the project itself, we're proposing to put about $500,000 immediately into the facility on renovation. Really, that renovation is not so much a structural renovation because the building is pretty sound. We're looking at beautification of the property. We're looking at replacing equipment, obviously paint, flooring, those kinds of things. So that's kind of us in a nutshell. We will have, let me take a little step back. We will have 3 levels of care that will be provided in this program. One will be a detoxification level of care, which will be supervised by our physician and by our nurses. And again, 24-hour nursing care, period, throughout the entire 6 weeks that the patient is there. But during this detox level of care, which usually lasts about 7 days, they're constantly monitored, they're constantly checked, much like you would see in a hospital with nurses rounding on the patients. The physician is there every day to check on the detoxing patients. Once they migrate out of detox, they move into the residential program, which will be housed at this facility as well. They'll remain in that program where they'll attend their groups, attend their support groups, everything they're supposed to do. We're going to involve their family in the addiction or in the treatment process as well. And then as they get closer and closer to their discharge, we're going to integrate more of the community resources, the support groups within your community for them so that they can immediately transition into their Alcoholics Anonymous group, Narcotics Anonymous group, whatever it happens to be. So again, you know, the treatment is very intense. It's very, very intense. It's short-lived for me, but 6 weeks is a good length that we can get them back into their homes and back into their workplace. So that's really our goal. Sounds pretty good, right?
Any questions from our board members for our applicant?
How large is the market that you're drawing from? You said in this market you think you're gonna drop it, I mean, are we talking GR, are we talking Lansing, are we talking South Bend? I mean, what is this market for this facility?
Actually, the market, the regional market, we're looking about 500,000 people drawing out of this market, which includes Lansing,
100-mile radius or so?
well, about 150-mile radius, yes,
150
yes.
mile radius. Okay.
Yes, and then again, we are also going to have a national campaign where we fully expect to reach into Ohio, we expect to reach into the Northeast. It's kind of what we
Okay.
do.
And then you talked about staffing and stuff like that.
Yes.
So you have 86 beds, or, you know, full capacity would be 86 beds.
86,
it sounds
yes.
like, yeah. So what would the staffing count be for daytime with 86 beds full versus nighttime 86 beds full?
That's a great question. So our ratios are, we have one staff to every 12, one therapist to every 12 clients during waking hours, what we call waking
Okay.
hours, which is your 8 in the morning till nighttime. Because our groups continue to go on throughout the night. We're staffed at a 1 to 10 for nursing. Those are above the state mandates. We're really looking at employing about 150 local employees here for this facility.
But at a daytime and at nighttime, I mean, I understand the 12 to 1, we're talking nighttime, there's no therapist, there's,
No, you'll,
I mean, if you have 86, you could have 8 nurses, 10 to 1?
what we do is there's about 10% of all of our patient population is in a detox at any given time. And so we
Okay.
staff to that ratio to our detoxing clients.
Okay.
But we're staffed all the time with nurses in the building. During the waking hours, where you have the majority of your therapists will be on site, we have therapists in the evening as well, running larger groups, not to the same density as we would do during the daytime, because we don't have small group or group therapy. We have larger groups in the evening. But again, therapists in the evening as well. Really, they're there to kind of diffuse any situation that may occur as a result of phone calls with family members or,
Sure, some.
you know, those.
Some trigger, yep.
Exactly.
So, what about things like, say smoking, for
Mhm.
example?
Mhm.
Smoking in the facility, smoking outside, smoking on city property. I mean, it's not necessarily an insignificant
Right.
question. How does the smoking get handled?
We do have we will establish a designated smoking area. Obviously, you know, following the state rule, there's a certain feet that you have to be away from every door or every
Right.
window. And it's not just mandated by the state, it's also mandated by the Joint Commission, who's our accrediting body, which we establish smoking areas for those. Obviously, nicotine is one of the most addictive chemicals on the planet. So our goal also during the course of treatment is to try to address all of the
Sure.
addiction, with the exception of coffee. We don't get to touch coffee because that's my last vice. But everything else we're going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
You know, but that is also part of the opportunity that we have, you know, but we understand
Those are
that
typically outside accommodation.
100%, nobody smokes in the building.
Okay. I think I'm good for now.
How do you handle intake and discharge? Is this, you say it's a voluntary facility,
Yes.
but does that mean they can come and go as they please?
By rule, they have to voluntarily sign themselves in, and they have to voluntarily sign themselves out if it's done prior to discharge, prior to their discharge date, or prior to the date that the therapist and the doctor believe it's time for them to go. Okay, so, but it's voluntary. They have the right to leave. They're not locked into a treatment center. Our intake process essentially happens that when we take an initial call, there's certain things that we have to vet to ensure that the patient needs the level of care we're providing. We go through a complete assessment that includes everything from their family history to their legal history, employment history, obviously their alcohol and drug history, all of the consequences that would lead them to believe that they need this level of care. Because there are patients who really at kind of whatever juncture or whatever point they are in their addiction cycle may need an outpatient level of care, not residential. So we want to qualify that, because as we're doing that, we also have to, whatever their insurance company is, we have to make justification to determine necessity for this intervention. And so we're wanting to make sure, A, that we're admitting them to the right level of care, appropriate, and B, that we can help them get the longest amount of treatment possible for them. So we do that on the front end.
But I guess I'm wondering about the comings and goings. If someone checks himself in, are they able just to walk right out the door? Or is there a formal discharge?
There's a formal discharge, yeah. No client ever leaves our facility without a formal discharge plan. I mean, whether they stay 10 days or whether they stay 45 days. Everybody will leave with a discharge plan back to a provider in their community, back to a physician, we will do everything we can for those who are trying to leave early when we don't believe it's time, that it's good in their best interest to leave. We'll do everything we can to intervene on that behavior because that's part of the thinking, that's part of the anxiety that happens and people want to run and find that thing outside of them to fix that thing inside of them. Our goal and our mission is to prepare them on the front end as well as their family to what treatment cycle looks like. And that anxiety is very, very normal. It was extremely normal. We anticipate it. So our intervention into our program is essentially not just introducing these are the rules, these are groups, but really kind of the benefits of being in treatment. And we involve the family from day one, or whoever their support group is in accountability, we involve them day one. If they're on probation, the probation officer is involved in our treatment planning process. The family is involved in our treatment planning process. Everybody of influence to this client is involved in our treatment planning process.
Okay, so then it's pretty much a secure facility. You say it's secure from things coming in, but it's also secure for them just going out.
They can leave. They can absolutely.
Could they leave at any time in the evening or whatever?
Absolutely.
They just go to the gate, go,
They can sign
I'm
them.
done here, let me sign the papers, I'm out
They
of
can
here.
absolutely sign themselves
Yeah.
out. Now, there is a time frame that I'm allowed, which is generally 72 hours. I'm allowed to, they have to sign saying, I want to leave, right? That allows the therapist, allows the physician, allows their support team to be able to talk to them, and to where they don't abruptly leave. Now, that being said, if they say, I don't want to sign anything, I'm going to be out of here, if the physician doesn't believe that they're a threat to themselves and has no reason to put them on any kind of a hold, he can't, so they can leave.
So if somebody wants to leave at 10 o'clock at night to walk down to Walgreens to get a bag of peanuts, they're allowed to come and go from the facility?
Yeah, they're not allowed to, once they discharge, okay, then they can't discharge and come right back in. It doesn't work that way. They've made a decision to leave the facility, which in a sense puts everyone in the facility at risk at that point if they come back.
So this is not like an apartment building
No.
where I might run out to the store and get a box of cereal or a gallon of milk and then come back to the facility. Once they're checked in, that's where they stay and they don't leave the property.
Correct. No access to their car, if they drive themselves there's no access to their car. We lock their car up. We have their keys in the safe. We contain the facility as much as we can within the legal rights that we have. It's not a psychiatric hospital where I literally can lock the doors and say you can't leave. That's not what this is. This is a voluntary admission program. There are residential programs that are locked units, and they're usually the court-mandated units where the judge says you're not leaving, you're not leaving. Those programs do exist.
I have one more question. When you say secured and contained, are you looking at any property improvements that would involve fencing or screening from the residential neighborhood?
Absolutely. No, we've already assessed the property. We're going to have to fence the property for two reasons. There is safety and security, and there's also confidentiality. Patients who are admitted to treatment have a lot of confidentiality rights, which we protect at all costs. And some of that is blinds on the windows, some of that is fencing. If we ever go off campus, you'll never see any of our staff with a badge that says, Lighthouse Recovery, and we're all getting out of a van together. That's violating their rights. We don't do that. So we will fence the property again, some of it's to create barriers, but also it's to protect their rights.
Has Lighthouse Recovery already acquired the property? It's already purchased?
It has not. We're waiting on this first.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to get this special exception before we move forward.
And how long has the facility been vacant?
I understand, a little over a year it's been sitting empty.
Okay.
So if I understand the issue correctly, we're looking at ordinance 39-2-2.09, where we're looking at permitted uses, and we're looking at the nursing home, and what you're suggesting is that your operation is going to be close enough to a nursing home that maybe this is warranted as a special exception.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes, it's overnight supervised medical care, behavioral care. It's definitely addressing the need of this ADA identified population. So yes, we definitely believe it meets.
Okay. Now, this is kind of a question for colleagues as well. I'm just a little bit concerned about what repercussions there would be if we say, well, it's not a nursing home, which is permitted use. Are we going to be stepping on some legal toes if we say this is not within this ordinance permitted use, and it's close enough, but it's not.
So the application that's in front of the Board of Appeals tonight is an accommodation request for persons with disabilities. It's not an interpretation on if it's a nursing home or not.
Okay.
So we did discuss during the study session earlier this evening that City Council has some legislation currently in front of them that would create a new allowed use in this zone district that would be called a care facility. So we're actually removing nursing home out of the ordinance and we're replacing it with care facility. So a care facility would encompass more uses that are similar in nature to what we're hearing tonight. Both nursing home uses, home for the aged, rehabilitation facilities. So that is currently in front of council. They have a second hearing scheduled next week, Wednesday. And if they approve that classification to be added to the city ordinance, then I think this application probably would fall under that definition, which we don't have today,
Right.
but it may be approved next week. And if that's the case, then they would need a special land use with the planning commission for the facility, and they would not need to be at the Board of Appeals. But I believe they were looking at an option to purchase the property and thought this was the better avenue, so that's why they're here tonight. And the best bucket that staff felt that they might fit in would be the accommodation for persons with disabilities. But legal counsel is not quite certain where the legality falls with the persons with disabilities section of our ordinance. So I don't know, Vince, if you wanna expound on that a little bit more?
Make sure my mic is on. Yes, thanks, Tricia. Looking at the accommodation language, there's a jurisdictional element to the code, and it's in 39-9.10 D1 that allows the board to grant a special exception for non-use requirements. And the board may be familiar with prior hearings where non-use requirements were a wider walkway for wheelchair access to a residential home, things that are not use related. And the application, and obviously we are hearing more tonight about the details. One of my concerns was the application said there would be no changes, made inside, painting, cleaning. So there's a concern that I have legally whether the board has jurisdiction to, consider. What is the request? Is the request to accommodate by approving a physical change, or is the request to allow a different use? Well, the jurisdictional section says you can only grant non-use special exceptions. So for that reason, I'm not convinced legally that there would be jurisdiction if that's the limit of the request. And so, we might need more time to research that. I don't have the best answer right now. You have options to table if you wanted a legal opinion on that, and I'd have to take into consideration what we're hearing tonight, obviously. But that's jurisdictionally, that's my main concern is it doesn't appear to be a non-use request from what I've heard so far.
Thank you.
Are there any limitations to your purchase option at the moment? I mean, are you under time constraints?
We are. The owners will. We continue to negotiate with the owners to allow time to get through this. And so I'm allowed that. It's once we get on the other side of whatever determination this group is going to make, then that'll either decide we go forward or not. They've not put a 3 months drop dead, we're done. They have not done that to me because we've continued to approach with this opportunity.
And do you have, you are aware of the city council's, ordinance change with respect to the language
I am,
of, okay.
yes.
What other facilities do you have in West Michigan currently?
We don't have any in West Michigan. This will be
None.
our first here.
Any in Michigan?
None in Michigan. This will be our first in Michigan.
Okay,
Yes.
so you are nationwide, but not
Yes.
yet here.
Yes, yes, yes. When I say that, you know, we have Ohio, New Jersey, California, Texas, opening in Ohio, opening in Florida.
Fair to say nationwide. I understand you're not covering
Not every
all
state.
50 states.
Not
I
every
understand
state.
that.
No,
I'm
no.
just,
I've worked in about 30 states, but not every state. No,
okay,
no.
no, I'm just curious.
That's okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments from our board or colleagues? Go ahead. Dave.
You had mentioned certain conditions that your residents have. I was wondering if you could tell me more about the legal avenues. You said, like, if someone has a probation officer, they're involved.
Yes.
At what level of, I don't want to say trouble that a person has to be in that would
Okay.
not be allowed in your residence?
You know, what we do as part of the admission process is we screen the appropriateness based on the history of the client. And so if there's a client that has a history of aggressive, violent behavior, this is not the right facility. It's you know, I've run forensic units. I understand that population. This would not be their population right now. If we have patients who have coexisting complicated medical issues that are beyond the scope of our nurses to care for 24 hours, this would not be our facility. We screen all of that on the front end to make sure that we have the capability to treat whatever the condition is. There are exclusions that we have to apply on the front because we're a residential. This is not a locked unit. It's not a hospital. I don't have seclusion rooms. This is not what we do. So yeah, we do a pretty significant screening on the front to ensure they're appropriate for us.
With all due respect, I'm going to come back again. You
Sure.
said that you don't take those violent people, you know, into your facility, but you ended the sentence with "right now." And so, would it be potentially a future accommodation that you would make at this facility?
Not at this facility, no.
Okay.
Not at this facility, no. This facility is not designed for that.
No, that's
population.
fine. I just, when you
Did I
end the
end with that
sentence
now?
with a
Did-
casual
did I
"right
really?
now," I casually pick it up and
I
have to come
appreciate
back.
that.
Like a
No,
yet.
Didn't realize I said that.
A
No, no.
budding lawyer.
Good catch, yes.
Anything else? I think we're good.
Do I get
Sounds like
that?
conversations with my
Absolutely.
wife. She does that to me all the time.
All right. I don't
What
have
you
a
said.
vote, so I'm not quite sure of my role here. And I've been on council and planning commission and zoning board, so tell me if I'm out of line with my questions. But I am curious about this facility. It's in my ward, and I've driven past it every day for, 40 years? And from what I understood, this place, which was a nursing home kind of facility, was not always in compliance with regulations.
Mhm.
Is that, so what, beyond paint, what will you have to do?
Well, what we do, and what I've already had two of my staff members already kind of move through the building to ensure that we have all the fire safety, all the life safety and fire safety appropriate needed for this level of care. We've checked all the equipment. We've checked even through to the dietary equipment. So, not privy to what created the problem with the prior owners. Not privy to that. But as a healthcare facility and working with the state fire marshal, with the health department, we will ensure that everything in the facility is compliant to this population need as required.
And-
Nikki, let me ask a quick question.
Sure.
Excuse me.
Mhm.
I used to build schools and those fire safety and
Right.
health department. What is is there an inspecting entity for your facility besides, you know, fire marshal and health department? Is there an organization that oversees these types of facilities? You know, hospitals have certain people that
Yes.
come in and inspect and et cetera, et cetera. Again, when I was building schools, those were the two things you had to do.
Right.
What is the next level up, or is there another level up for inspection?
Absolutely. So we have, beyond the local authorities, obviously the health department, the fire marshal is always involved. There is the Joint Commission, which is an accrediting body that comes through our facilities. The Joint Commission is an organization that involves themselves in healthcare facilities, and their primary mission is one thing, and it's safety. They look at safety and care. That's all they look at. So they come through, they ensure that life safety is appropriate, they ensure bedroom size is appropriate, the equipment's appropriate, down to bedding. Everything has to be safe to the client, safe to the staff. So that is one level. We also have your state licensing authority who comes through and they do the same inspections.
Okay.
They will count exit lights, they will count sprinkler heads, they do everything
Some kind
that
of fire
even your-
marshal stuff, yep.
everything inclusive of what a fire marshal and the health department will do, they do as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Didn't mean to send you,
Oh, that's okay.
interrupt, it just seemed
I
like
think
a
this
really
is a
important
good
time to ask that
discussion.
question.
So, the city's always glad to get a new business in town and of course, increase employment. And so I'll take the place of someone else on council who always asks, so where is your staff come from? Because as we know in these times, staffing is a difficult thing, as is the supply chain. And then how much would you be paying these? What kind of jobs would these add to our community?
That's a great question. So in the medical component, we will have registered nurses and licensed professional nurses who will be a part of who will encompass the medical team, as well as certified nursing assistants. We use those as well. And those really are specifically for our detox or front end of the treatment to ensure the safety of the patient. We will hire and recruit licensed clinical social workers, licensed alcohol and drug counselors, behavioral health techs to manage the patients and manage the milieu. We hire dietary staff, plant operations staff. We hire housekeeping staff. Everything you can think about that happens in a hospital, we hire. Added to, we also have therapists and everybody else. And so obviously we have a medical director who's contracted. He's not employed by us, he's contracted by us. And then we have an administrative team, which will include an executive director, a clinical director, chief financial officer. Then we have a whole bevy of back office, the billing company or the billing staff and all of that. So it's about 150 employees, if not more, that we'll hire for this facility. What we do is we recruit from the local area. My goal is always, primarily two reasons, I'll just be very honest with you. My goal is always just to recruit locally because of relocation costs are very expensive. So I want to do that. The company doesn't have to incur that. The other side of it is that we want to employ people from the market because you know the market. You know the people here. You know the doctors, the physicians, or the therapists. You know, and so we want to bring the local opportunity to our front door. So we recruit those nurses and from this area, therapists. If we have to go beyond, I obviously part of my feasibility is I look at labor and the excess and availability of labor. There's some barriers, I'll be very honest with you, there's some barriers, especially around the nurses, of recruiting nurses. So obviously when we look at Grand Rapids, we start looking at what's drive time to be able to take one of these positions. Salaries really depend on the position, to be very honest with you. So registered nurses could make up to $120,000 a year. Therapists make around up to $90,000 a year. My executive will make $150,000 to $180,000 a year. So in there, my behavioral techs are probably $25 an hour people. So depending on their experience. So.
And the day-to-day staff taking care of people will make commensurately less than?
The day-to-day, I'm sorry.
Staffing, laundry, food.
They like dietary staff, I think,
Cleaning.
again, it ranges. My dietary director will probably be close to $75,000 a year is generally what I pay. My dietary staff will be in the probably $40,000 to $50,000 range. I mean, that's kind of the going market. My housekeeping staff is right in there. It's fairly similar to what I pay my dietary staff. In plant operations, obviously my director will make more, but.
And do you see any, with this perhaps change the use, any increase in noise, or there'll be some more traffic changing, that because there's been nothing
Yeah, I was
there.
going to say, there will be
Yeah.
additional traffic. Now, this isn't a facility where people come and go. Like, clients don't come and go all day long. I mean, average, you're looking at maybe 3 to 4 admissions every 2 or 3 days, because they stay such a long period of time. And so it's not like an outpatient program where they're in and out all day long. Obviously, the staff are in phases because the majority of the density of the staff is that 8 to 5 shift, because that's when the majority of our group therapy and whatnot goes on. So the traffic you're going to see is really the staff coming and going. That's what you're going to see. So it's, if I could break it up, you're probably going to have 50% of the staff will be during waking or daytime hours, we'll call it. 25% during evening, 25% in non-waking or overnight hours is what you're going to see. And we're staffed 24 hours, or 7 days a week. So you're going to see that all the time.
So at night, there won't be lights out to?
Yeah, no,
I mean, thinking neighbors are right behind.
No,
and
we're actually very mindful about not creating a lot of attention, because again, attention creates curiosity, which then puts risk at their confidentiality. And so what we try to do is, it's gonna be a beautiful place. It'll be well lit inside. Obviously, the parking lot will be lit up, because I don't want staff walking through the parking lot dark. I don't want that to happen. But you're not gonna see a compound of, where, a helicopter could land. I mean, that's not what we're going to do.
All right. And I noticed in the report, and this is my last question, I'll let you guys go on. You mentioned some of the what do you call them, clients, inpatients?
Clients.
Might be some of the former clients of this. So do you have are you looking at a range of ages, or do you primarily skew toward the older?
Right now, there's two growing populations that are in the most need of addiction treatment. That is the collegiate age group and the retiring age group. Those are our two biggest growth populations. And so we create programs that essentially treat the population as a whole, but then we have specific tracks for whatever age group that may be, because obviously, I have college-age kids, and so their issues and what they deal with and how they deal with it are much different than I'm dealing with my stuff. And so we want to make sure that we're addressing that. The readmission or recidivism is pretty low in residential treatment, not like psychiatric hospitals where you have about 25% people readmit within 30 days. Treatment centers, you're around 4 to 5% will come back to the treatment center.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Great questions.
Yeah, I did have one question about the length of time between, let's say if I'm your client, because I have an issue that I need your facility to help me resolve, but I decide at some point, I'm out, I can't do this anymore, and I leave. And you'd mentioned that it's not just like an apartment, where you can just come and go. So what would be how much time would it be between, I guess it could be a case-by-case basis maybe, but is there a general timeline of, someone leaves as a client, they cannot come back for, at minimum, X number of days, months? What would be that baseline time?
That's a great question. 30 days. 30 days.
30
If you
days.
choose to leave against medical advice or against clinical advice, then there has to be a 30-day gap before you're allowed to reassess to determine whether or not you need us back. Because not just, if people will leave treatment and they will go back to their life and they will get themselves into some trouble. Usually it's with a spouse or with their work or whatever, and they'll say, I'll just go back to treatment, right? Well, what we don't want to do is we don't want to be part of that problem. I mean, we can refer you to other programs. There are programs in this area we can make referrals to. And so they don't have to come back to us. We want to make sure that we are holding the client accountable. We're also trying to make sure we're not creating an environment of kind of the rounded door, just in and out, because there's a risk of contamination to your existing population if you readmit somebody too soon. Because, Kirk leaves treatment early, and Kirk's best friend's Mike's there, and so Kirk leaves, brings drugs in, gives them to Mike, and now the whole population is at risk. So, not that that's going to happen, but again, my primary mission is to, while my clients are with me, to make it the safest place I can for them. That's my primary mission. We'll treat them, we'll care for them, we'll put them back on firm footing. They'll, the color will return to their skin, they'll stand up straight, everything will be better, right? But my primary goal is make it safe and provide great treatment. That's my goal.
Thanks.
I think I had one quick question, maybe for staff. The changes that have been discussed at City Council with the ordinance change, were they a direct result of this application? No. Okay. I just want to be clear on that. All right. That was something that was already moving through. Just
Yes, because
coincidental.
as Kirk mentioned, we made him aware of those changes prior to them submitting their application to the Board of Appeals.
Right.
Yeah, so
Again.
the changes were already in process.
Again, I just want to make that clear and open,
Sure.
that those changes taking place at City Council are not in direct relation to this application.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I believe we're all set with questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I think there is some legality questions as to the appropriateness of our discussion, what we're going to, to approve or not to approve. At the same time, we also have the opportunity to allow people to speak. and we can do that. If we were to table this, we could table this now and move on without allowing people to speak. And I don't think that would be fair, because I believe we have some interested parties here. So at this time, what I would like to do is open a public hearing and provide people an opportunity to speak. And first, if there's anybody who wishes to speak in support, please approach the podium. And again, I remind everyone, please state your name and address for our record. Or anybody who wishes to speak in opposition. So please, or just to speak. On this application, of course.
Hi, my name is Shelley DeFow. I live right next to the building. And so I have some questions. You were talking about fencing?
Yes.
Talking about fencing around the
Could you,
building?
excuse me,
I'm
could you
sorry.
address
I'm sorry.
the board? here? Yeah.
Yes, my question.
We will provide
Yeah.
an opportunity for the applicant
Okay.
at the end of the public hearing to abut,
Yeah, I'm
to
sorry.
rebut it, all questions, so.
Okay. One of the questions I had, he was talking about fencing. It does have a fence in the back where they had the garden area. And that was the last place they had from the previous owner where they allowed the smoking to occur. Before they allowed it to occur there, they had the residents go off the premises to go and smoke. So one of my questions for him is regarding the fencing. How much of the premises is going to be fenced off? Because he was saying that it needed to be made very, very private for everyone. So my question is, where is the new fence, or the fencing that he's speaking of, where is that going to be? And what kind of fencing is it going to be? Is it going to be something, because he said something about privacy, so I would like to know that. And because this facility does impact the people around us, that's going to make a huge impact on us. The previous owners, when they had some individuals who had some smoking addictions, and those residents would leave the facility and they would smoke off but he said that they were going to stay on. But I'd like to know a little bit about that. And I know that some of the prior residents, when they would smoke in the garden area, that was a little bit of an issue but he said he was going to address that, so that no one can come to bring them things that they should not have. So that's one of the things. Yeah, those are like some of the questions that I would have at this point in time. I was really hoping this facility would stay a nursing home facility in the neighborhood, but I understand that there's other needs too, so.
All right, would you be happy if we addressed all of the concerns at the end? All at the same
Whenever.
time? Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Achterhoff. I live at 484 West 30th Street, and that is just to the north of the back of this area. My landlady who owns the property is here as well. I got some questions about the fencing, of course, and like how high this fence is going to be, what type of fence. Is it going to go right to the end of their property? Because our property back there is behind the East Side Drive area, and they've got a bunch of pine trees, and then it goes back farther, and it's not been taken care of, and it seems to be not taken care of a lot. They have a tree which borders our property that I have to keep picking up the dead branches that fall out of it and put it on their property, and before I get hit again, I would like it taken down. That would be something I would like. But also, 30th Street from Ottawa down to Plasman had been redone about a year or so ago. New sidewalks, new everything. And with the help of the neighborhood people and stuff, we got a lot of the landlords, with Nikki's help, with the city police help, they started watching over, because we were having problems with some of the fights basically down there. our neighborhood is now back to where we want it to stay, where we've got a lot of great people, but we also have a lot of new kids in there. We've got the schools in here all around this area, and I'm wondering why here? This is all residential. This is an area that we need to keep residential. I loved having the home there for the senior citizens until Hallmark took over. But it's like, we've got all of this in here. We've got an apartment complex. Everything's been going really good. Now what's gonna happen? We start taking this over. Are we gonna have people coming up to try and see their buddies, tossing things over our fence, going through our backyard, the larcenies, the break-ins? You know, I'm just a little concerned about it because you've got the people who wanna get back with their buddy and help them out to give them a little something, and I know it's happened in other places. It's just very, yeah, I'm worried about it. And like, when they come out, are they gonna have security guards in there at night to make sure these people don't sneak out the door when the nurse is busy elsewhere? What kind of situation are we going to have with this? Is it something where they're gonna be able to go out, climb over the fence, get into our backyard, get into the other neighbor's backyard where they've got a lot of little kids now? I'm very concerned about it because it's just not an area for it. We have way too many senior citizens around there. And they're in their 80s. We have a complex across the street on 32nd Street with a lot of senior citizens. I'm kind of worried. So I just want to put in on there. I was looking at a couple things on the paperwork that he wrote, and Nikki, you brought that up on one area of it, where they talked about displace the previous skilled area, you know, people in there. But it also says the elderly are predisposed to abuse and or violent outbursts. And is this one of the things that are gonna be coming back in there that we have to be worried about? I'm very, very worried about what's gonna be coming in here. And I just don't see this a residential area as being the place that it should be. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to come up and speak? Okay, I welcome you to come up and, if you would, our applicant, if they could come up and address some of I believe we had questions about fencing, and I guess that raised a question for me, whether there'd be gates on the driveways. And then, sounds,
Smoking
the smoking area.
Security in the evening.
Yep.
So
I
4
think
things I wrote down.
those are the
Somebody's
items,
got
yeah.
something else, I don't know.
Thank you.
Again, I think they're fair questions. The fencing area, obviously, if there's, we understand the property hasn't been cared for. And that's part of our beautification responsibility when we acquire the facility is to make that enjoyable for everyone in the community and in the neighborhood. I mean, I don't want anybody being hit by a limb or anything, so we'll take care of that, and there's no doubt about it. But the fencing essentially will be a minimum of 10 feet tall. Okay, we do that on purpose, just from site issue. It is a picket fence. It's a solid picket fence, so there's no visibility through the fence. We secure the areas where we allow the patients access to. So, for instance, you know, the very exterior of the building or the property there, that's not an access point. We have grassy areas where we'll encase that with the fence. The parking lot's not fenced because our staff need to come and go and park. And so we absolutely secure the property. I think her question was around is there a risk that somebody's going to come and bring drugs and whatnot? Part of our responsibility and the security that we have, the reason we're staffed is the clients are never alone. I mean, we don't let the clients meander around the property by themselves. If they're outside, our staff's outside. Now, it's not a psychiatric hospital, so it's not that kind of thing, but we're outside with them on purpose because, again, my responsibility is to make the place safe. And so we monitor, we do camera the outside of the building, we camera the inside, but we camera the outside of the building, so the nurses station are always watching the comings and goings of anybody who's on our property. So we know when people are around. I mean, and again, we do have staffs, we do have security, as well as our behavioral techs are from those non-waking hours, the midnight to 8 a.m. hours. Did I answer your questions?
Okay, and the fencing, would there be gates across the driveways?
Across the driveway?
Yeah.
No, not
It's
across
a
the.
3-sided scenario? The front of the-
Correct.
the front's
It'll be
open, but
enclosed.
the
It'll be,
three
yeah,
sides are
exactly.
fenced.
So
Okay.
they can get to the parking lot is
Right.
kind of what we do, but everything else will be contained.
Three-sided, okay.
The front, walking into the front door, obviously, the fence will come off, much like your home. The fence will come off the corner, come down, around and back. The lot will be available, admissions to the front door will be available. Again, during hours when my receptionist is not in the front, the door's locked. I mean, you have to you have to key in, the nurse will come let you in. If it's an admission that's after 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, that's how we control our population.
Okay.
A good question, so.
You're going on the fencing?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking about, the fencing would have to meet the city's
Mhm.
requirements, of course.
Right.
Height and style.
Right.
There are a lot of.
Right, whatever the community, exactly.
Right. I think we've got all our questions. All right. And I will throw out one more opportunity before I close the public hearing. Not seeing anybody moving forward, so I will close the public hearing and look for direction from the board in terms of where we want to take this in terms of a motion.
I motion to table.
Okay, we have a motion to table this pending,
Pending the results of the current ongoing discussions within the council.
okay.
We have a better understanding from council of the direction we're going to go with the zoning.
Okay. And just to make everybody aware that if this does go forward with the tabling, we can open another public hearing again when this does come back, if this does come back, but, your comments are received and we appreciate them, so. Any other discussion on the motion at hand?
No, I just wanted to add that there's other factors involved here, the gray areas, the use, the non-use, and.
Right, and
just
one of the
be-
things that I was kind of searching for while we were discussing all of this was the Fair Housing Act,
Right,
and to make sure that we aren't making any mistakes in regards to that law, because there is some gray areas when it comes to how our ordinance is written versus the way that the Fair Housing Act is designed.
And for the audience, some of the issue is if we pass something here, that we could be setting precedent that may not be appropriate without all the information that we truly need in the legal counsel, et cetera.
Correct. This is
And it's
one
not
where-
just, we're not
Yep.
just accommodating because there's something brewing. There's a serious gray area with the information and where we
Right.
stand legally, et cetera. And that, in
Right.
addition to what's going on with council, has
Right,
pushed
this
us-
is a
pushed us
situation
in
we
this
don't want
direction
to set
to
ourselves
table.
up for a lawsuit.
correct.
essentially.
Matt, I believe you had something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, rethinking my question, I suppose, but, I'm just wondering if, because we're talking about tabling this for later, in lieu of, advice from Vince about this, but I guess I'm a little bit concerned about, if this accommodation is made for, persons with disabilities that are, within the Fair Housing Act, covered within the Fair Housing Act, isn't that our guidance, that our precedent is that this is a special exception for people with disabilities, and that's not necessarily setting a new precedent that changes ordinances and makes us rezone things. It's just sort of this is a special exception,
Right.
and that's why we're going to go through with this rather than tabling it, perhaps.
The ordinance, though, says that the request must be for a non-use request, such as widening a sidewalk for wheelchair accommodation. And so Vince, I think, needs to do some research.
Because this is
With-
a use request, more or
Correct.
less.
Correct.
Okay.
So we don't want the board to make a decision that might be in direct violation of our ordinance or the fair housing laws.
Hmm.
I think the only other position would be to vote on it, but I think that really doesn't, I still like the direction we're going, but the other
No,
option
right.
was to do that. I still like the direction of tabling it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying out loud that we could follow through the whole thing, but.
No, and I think I'm hearing what Matt was saying, is that the special exception for reasonable accommodation that was originally sought with this isn't what is requiring a fundamental alteration in the zoning. It wasn't the use, or it wasn't the reasonable accommodation that would require that. It was just the use request possibly, but again, that's gonna be addressed, it sounds like, so.
So, yeah, it sounds like our hands, at least to me, it sounds like our hands are almost tied with the use, non-use issue. of
Correct.
Whether we can even
Yes.
rule with this. But if we table this decision and hypothetically, city council passes that ordinance change that changes nursing home to care facility, then this would be moot. If they decide not to pass that change, then we're kind of stuck, and we would not be able to pass this, is what I'm hearing, is because this is.
We'd have further legal
We need more opinion, because of
Right.
the way our ordinance is written, it talks about this has to be a non-use. And I've been doing some research on that during this whole time, because I wanted to make sure that not only I wanted to make sure our ordinance is in lockstep with federal requirements. Because if it's not, then and we make a decision based on our ordinance, we could be setting ourselves up for a problem.
Sure.
So, so we table this, and I'm feeling that the people in the audience might want to express their concern somewhere else, because they're not getting the true, they've told us, but we've tabled it.
Right.
The process in place, or where it's going on with council, can you expound on it a little bit, the readings and so on and so forth?
Sure. So what city council is looking at is a change to the entire ordinance code, not a change for this facility.
Yes.
So if any member of the public felt that care facilities would not be a good use in the city of Holland, they could go to city council. If city council approves the care facilities, it would be in the zoning ordinance, and I would be happy to provide further direction on what that means. But this facility, even if council approves the care facilities in the zoning ordinance, if this facility wants to go in this location, it's not a done deal. They still have to go to the planning commission. They have to bring a full plan, landscape design.
Fencing,
and
et cetera,
a
et cetera,
lot
et
of
cetera.
really similar information to what was discussed tonight. But it would be required to go through planning commission as a special land use prior to getting final approval for this location.
I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew what else was out there, what other areas of information they could get, or whatever you want to say.
And this is applied to currently, where this is located is a high-density residential zone district.
Correct.
But you're speaking of council going through all the zones and allowing care facilities, or just in this high-density residential zone district?
So right now, in chapter 2 of the ordinance, it sets all of the uses that are allowed in each individual zone district. So currently, nursing homes are allowed in multiple zone districts. High-density residential, CMU, a variety of zone districts.
Right.
So we're looking at changing out the words, taking out nursing home, putting in care facilities, and they would be allowed in those same zone districts as they are today.
Okay.
Now, high-density residential, we have a caveat proposed that if it's 20 persons or less, that would be not as significant of a use or lower density, so that would be allowed by right. But if someone wants more than 20 occupants, then they go to the planning commission for a special land use. But care facilities would be allowed in high-density residential, corridor mixed use, in all of the same zones as it is allowed today.
Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. Okay. I think, any other discussion? Then I think we'll take a roll call vote on the motion at hand to table.
All right, Shay,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Sorick.
Yes.
Motion to table passes.
Okay, thank you. On to our next item.
So the next application is for the address at 702 East 8th Street, application number 22.08Z. Scott Sternberg, on behalf of Doors of Hope, is requesting a variance for the property located at 702 East 8th Street. Doors of Hope would like to convert the existing dentist office on the main floor to a residential apartment, creating 2 apartments in this building where a mixed use with commercial is required. The Board of Appeals can approve this request if certain conditions are found to exist. 39-2.11 and 39-12.12E1.
All right, thank you. And I believe we have our applicant.
Yes, thank you. My name's Scott Sternberg, and yeah, this is for 702 East 8th Street. First of all, Doors of Hope is a small nonprofit organization with offices in Holland and Zealand. We work with families trying to break out of generational poverty. So we do a lot of we do a lot of things like budget counseling, connecting with resources. One of our advantages is that we have a huge church network that supports us and supports the people in need that we work with. So we're able to bring those communities together. As we were working with our clientele, one of the biggest needs that we find that they have is housing. And that's no surprise to anybody in the city of Holland. I know there's been a lot of initiatives here in Holland for housing and creative housing. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do is creative housing. Sometimes we put 2 of our clients together into a roommate situation if it's compatible for them. Sometimes we work with churches who own homes, and those homes are sitting empty, so we can use those as transitional housing, putting families in those homes for a short period of months, 18 months, where we work on all of their other life skills while they have a safe place to live. So Dr. Dan Ankerman has this office that he was using prior to COVID. He chose during the COVID chaos to retire. So he came to us, we came to him, kind of a mutual conversation about could that be used as housing. Currently, the apartment above is used for housing. And so we were looking at that apartment. We came to the city asking if there was some kind of a temporary variance that we could get so that we could use it as the building sits today without looking at what the building might be in the future. And then I was directed to Stephen Peterson, and then he put me on this path and working with Tricia, and here we are tonight. So what we're looking to do simply is to take that dentist office that's small, outdated. Most dentist offices now are large multi-dentist practice, so the building doesn't fit well for office space anymore, and convert that back to housing. It was housing originally. It was built as a single-family home, and that was 40 plus years ago. So we and our church partners have the ability to go in and renovate a property for very little cost due to the volunteers that we use and the donations that we get from our community partners. And so that was our hope, is that we'd be able to step in and do that for this property and provide another family who desperately needs housing in our community with a place to live and reset their life skills. So we have 3 other homes in the community that we're working with now, so this is a process that we are currently doing. It's just really hard to find housing that we can rent for small amounts of money. Excuse me. The funds to renovate, the funds to renovate, the funds to renovate, the funds to renovate that, funds to renovate that home, so he would not incur those costs. Therefore, he'd be able to rent it to our clients for a much lower than market rate rent. In addition, we're talking with him about the 2 properties that are next door. They're on Waverly Road and some kind of a development there. As I understand with my discussions with Stephen Peterson, that those won't need rezoning because they're already zoned medium density, so they can handle a duplex, triplex type size building. We don't know exactly what they'll handle based on the size of the property, et cetera, but those smaller multi-family buildings. The issue is that when they widened 16th Street, they essentially made driveway access to those 2 lots unavailable. So currently, those 2 lots are have driveway access through this property at 708 East 8th Street.
You mean, I'm sorry, you mean Waverly, not 16th? I think you misspoke.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I said
Yeah,
16th.
That's okay, that's all right.
Yes, thank you.
Just wanted to clarify.
I did
All right.
that yesterday too, I don't know why. So yes, so the two properties on Waverly that are residential zoned, so right next to it, access through A Street based on just like that widening of 16th Street, there's an extreme hill there. In the past, the property has been looked at for a commercial venture, such as like a CVS or things like that. The property is found to be too hilly for that. They would essentially have to tear out the hill and flatten it. So what the future ability to build on that property is, I don't know. I just know that they felt they weren't able to. We haven't looked into that. That's not our intention. Our intention is to put one family in this one unit.
Any questions, comments from our board?
So Doors of Hope, does it own the building outright? Does it, or are you just looking to purchase or use the first floor for this use, and then the upper story, which is already an apartment, is not Doors of Hope?
With the program.
Okay.
The program.
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
Program.
Okay.
Program.
Okay. Okay.
And you're currently using the property upstairs?
We are not. We are not.
You're not?
Nope,
Okay.
that has an independent lease for that.
So Doors of Hope is interested in just using the previous commercial space on the first floor?
Yes,
Okay.
converting
So
that back
the
to residential.
existing unit is a unit managed by the property owner
Correct.
and is going to remain that way?
Yes, we will look at that in the future, but at this point, there is a one-year lease on the upper unit, so that will maintain, obviously, at least through that lease.
Any other questions?
Well, we have criteria that we look at that guide us through these decisions, you know what I mean? And so those criteria are, can the building or structure or land be reasonably used for the use that it is permitted to in the zone district? So can it still have a commercial use underneath, you know, at that lower level? Because in the district, it should be commercial and residential, or all commercial. So there's a whole list of things that could be used, not all of them necessarily applicable, but there's a couple of them in there that could work, daycare possibly, or something like that.
And I guess that comes into whether you just mentioned structure / property, or property. The
Building
structure
or
as it
land.
is wouldn't be useful.
I'm sorry.
The structure as it is really is too out of date to use as a commercial property. The structure.
Right, but we have to determine, based on ordinances, why the property cannot be reasonably
Okay.
used. So, because the
That's what I wanted
zoning
to
applies to the
clarify.
property, not necessarily, the structure that is there today.
Yeah. It's comma, structure, or.
Comma, structure, or.
Right.
The other one is the variance needed due to unique circumstances, physical conditions of the property, such as narrowness, shallowness, shape, water, topography. Yeah, and that's an odd site, there's no doubt about it, so that can go a couple different. Will the proposed use alter the essential character of the neighborhood is another question. And then, did the current property owner or previous owner do something that created the need for the variance? And it's really just what needs to be there. It's gotta be either all commercial or commercial / residential. I just wanted to throw the criteria out there.
Because it's
Didn't
zoned,
expound on any of it, but I wanted to throw the criteria out there.
it's zoned mixed use, which means it has to, by definition, it has to have commercial presence on it.
Correct.
If we were to pass this and it's got residences on both floors, we have effectively counteracted the actual zoning. I mean,
Correct.
that's effectively a residential unit on a
Yep.
Commercial.
mixed use.
Right.
Correct,
Property.
mixed use.
So
Neighborhood
today,
mixed
the
use.
property is conforming in
Right.
the
Right.
current situation.
Yep.
Right. So we would be creating a non-conforming building if this was to go to, residential for both floors.
But again, the two properties were right next door, and actually from that point all the way down to the other corner at 16th Street are residential, medium-density residential. So it's butting up against that.
Has the city looked into potentially rezoning this from mixed use to a residential?
Planning staff has looked at it. The master plan calls for this corner property to be commercial. Planning staff did not necessarily think that the planning commission would be in favor of rezoning the property. In conversations also, it sounds like there's the potential for a bigger development down the road that may meet the intent of the ordinance.
When you say down the road, do you mean literally or figuratively down the road?
Figuratively.
Figuratively.
Okay.
Yep.
And we had talked about temporary. This is the need today, but maybe in the future, the property could be developed. And none of our regulations are intended to kind of flip back and forth between an allowed use and then a not allowed use and then go back to another allowed use. So planning staff did not feel confident the planning commission would approve a rezoning. They believe that this corner should be commercial. The master plan points to it being commercial. So that's why they're here in front of the Board of Appeals to try to get a variance to see if there's something unique about the property that would meet the criteria for a variance.
Any other questions? Thank you for bringing the application before us. We appreciate it. All right. At this time, I'll open a public hearing and allow anybody who wishes to speak in support of this application, they may approach. Or anybody in, oh. I guess it really doesn't matter if you're for
Opposed
or
or with
against. It doesn't matter what order
just
we go
wanna
in,
talk.
I guess. Yeah, just please
don't-
bring your
This is Robert
concerns.
Aikman, DDS, 226 Tiffany Ridge Drive, north side of Holland. I've had the dental practice there since '83, and it has served me very well. But as you probably know from your own healthcare, most dental practices now are multi, and I was a single practitioner. I enjoyed that and had a wonderful career. The practice would not support, the size of the building would not support 2 or 3 dentists, which is the going trend. So I'm kind of stuck with what would happen in my office building. I thought, and I acquired more pieces of property that are adjacent to it on Waverly, in that somebody like, I can't think of it, up the supermarket would want that piece of property. But the hillside is a problem for that sort of thing. So the development of that property is somewhat limited. The gentleman that just spoke has presented a perhaps solution to me and the greater Holland area, which has a terrible housing crisis right now. It's in the news all the time. So I'm hoping that can be, at least temporarily, judged to be a resident again as it was 40 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to come up and speak? For or against? Thank you. All right, I will close our public hearing and look for deliberation amongst the board, if not a motion.
Well, I think that the uniqueness of the property itself does need to be addressed. If it's set for mixed use, but we are really looking at, it's going to be very difficult to find a commercial use for the property. Now, I'm not even saying like the structure itself, because we have to deal with the zoning, zoning board of appeals, we have to deal with zoning. If it's mixed use and there's very little else that can go in there. Do we take that into account, the topography of the site? Saying, well, we can't really stick any other structures on here that would be commercially viable. We had a small dentistry practice on the first floor, and can that be used for something else? Is kind of an interesting question to pose based on the location and its topography, I guess. So what do you guys think?
Well, it is one of the 4 criteria, so we do take that into account. But I don't believe it is the only criteria or the governing criteria. We do have to get all of the criteria to approve. It should meet all of those. And in addition, if we were to opine here that, well, this doesn't really match what the zoning is, we can't, again, do anything that would be considered rezoning, or, we do not do any of the rezoning ourselves. So, it's something that would have to be taken up by planning commission or city council themselves. So yes, we do take that, to answer your question, Matt, we do take it into consideration, but again, we do have several proofs that several items of criteria that do need to be met, all of them, not just one.
With planning that has made this the mixed use already, that has to be taken into account, that there was a reason for that. And I think we have to really focus on that as well too, is that there's many things that this piece of property can be viably used for. And that's why it was written the way it was. And we need to keep that in mind.
In addition to, well, we don't work towards the master plan, but planning commission does.
Right.
So, is it our jurisdiction to define reasonable when it comes to reasonably used? I seem to recall that a national chain thought about being part of this, purchasing this property, and they can take on much bigger costs, like moving a bunch of dirt, than local. So I guess that seems like a proof of concept, or a proof of, the opposite of proof of concept.
Right.
I don't know where our duties lie, right, I just think it's important to point that out.
I also think this is one of those times, too, that council, sometimes we have two visions, housing and commercial, and they kind of meet and crash. So you don't, maybe planning commission doesn't want to change the zoning, that's not their intent, and yet we need housing, so it's up to your Board of Appeals here.
Trying to find out how big the lot is.
Well, and I think to kind of answer Devin's question, I think, yes, the Board of Appeals
acre.
can make a determination on reasonable.
Okay.
I don't know that one example
Sure.
then says that, yes, because we have one example of something that didn't work, then that makes it reasonable. But I do think if the board heard, we tried 12, we tried a coffee shop, we tried another dentist, we tried an office, we tried a lawyer, we tried CVS, we tried all of these different broad range of things, and there was nothing, then yes, I think the board could take that into consideration to make a determination on if that is reasonable or not.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems that the gears of this system turn really slow. And, we're
Welcome to the
talking
board.
about, a master plan that is probably, I don't know what the scope of that is usually.
5 years old.
Sure, but I mean, how far out the master plan?
20
is-
years.
20 years, so that's you know, a long time. But it is, I want to say I empathize with the frustration of this, of not being able to, you know, have a stay on that, on the zoning and say, well, look, it makes logical sense, you know. But it just seems like I think we're just tied up in the way it works.
The property, it goes south on well, it's on the corner, obviously, but if you go south down Waverly, it goes all the way to the next house, correct? That's what I'm kind of seeing here. All right, so
She's showing it.
although the grade is substantial, there's still a fair amount of flat space.
At the top of the hill.
Yes, to the south. Right. It's basically that corner is what it looks like. That's where all the grade is.
Right, and then there's a berm along Waverly.
Yeah, I didn't drive a long way, but I didn't do that.
it's those
I
two-
went up in the driveway and I looked around, but I didn't go.
But there's those two properties there, which ironically, looking at the zoning, are zoned residential. So,
The flat land is actually on those second residential lots.
at the top of the hill. It's just the access, like you brought up, is currently is coming off of 8th Street because,
Same owner?
yes,
Separate lot, same owner.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, if you go back to, yeah,
That's what I thought I heard earlier. I just wanted to confirm.
yeah, I guess we have a question.
May I approach again?
Yeah, I will,
Is the public hearing closed?
the public hearing is closed, but if the board is seeking clarification, I
They
would say.
could reopen the public
I
hearing.
will reopen the public hearing, thank you, to allow some response. Go ahead.
Robert Ankerman again.
Yep.
In '93, when the road was widened, prior to that, both those, there were houses on 209, 213. And the driveway went, at that time, steeply down onto Waverly Road. When the road was widened, and I think that was 93, 94, that became terribly dangerous. And so I'm forgetting the man's name that was working with me, but he said, could we come in for those two homes through your property? And I agreed to that because it was just unsafe. If you, on a slippery day, you were going down onto the 4 lanes of Waverly Road. So they became, without my property, they were landlocked without my 702 East 8th, the dental unit. So it became unsafe, and they needed access through my property at the time. And I subsequently bought those two properties. I think one in about that same time, 93, and one in 96, the two 50-foot by 125 lots that are attached to my dental practice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still open?
Yes, it is.
There you go. You got another opportunity.
Terry Caldwell, 16253 Ransom Street, Holland. I'm also the director at Doors of Hope. And we receive about 400 calls a month for people who are in crisis, and most of those have to do with housing. And right now we have 2 very pregnant women that have no place to live. And so it's really frustrating to sit back and know that we have this house that we could renovate probably in a month and put a family in there, at least temporarily, to give them a place to live. When we're looking at 20 years from now, are we gonna put a grocery store on the counter or on the corner? And so, you know, I think that we have to look at the acute problem that we have in the city right now, which is housing, and we can't ignore that. I mean, I'm not a planner or any of this, but I deal day in and day out with the crisis and the needs of people, and we don't have anything to offer them. And it's just really frustrating. And so when we've got this house that's been sitting there empty now, because Bob retired a couple years ago, that we could have a family in there in a month, it's just hard for me to sit back and be quiet. So I respectfully submit my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking
Thank you
up.
so much.
Thank you.
So it feels like we need to push the the gears, and maybe city councilman being here can help with that, because it seems like we are trying to deal with a zoning issue that is not allowing us to do something that maybe the city needs, because as far as I can tell, we have butted up against, this is zoned mixed use, and we can't, we would effectively be rezoning this into a residential property if we approve of this, and now that is a big problem, and we will be severely reprimanded, I imagine, by Trish and Dan.
Or possibly other, it's, real quick, if I may, Matt, I would like to close our public hearing, and I'll close that. And then on this, we are asked to determine whether we feel that the land can be reasonably used for the use that is permitted in the zone district. It has been used in the past as a commercial. I understand it, if we're trying to reuse it for a commercial space, and I understand there's a lot of vacant commercial space also out there.
She put some stuff up for us.
Yeah, all the permitted uses that could be in there.
So it could be an office building.
It could be an office, it could be a childcare,
Yep.
it could be, as you mentioned, it could be a salon, it could be an attorney's office. I know one of my first jobs was, in an engineering office that was in a former home, much like this one, actually, so.
Going back to a comment that Trish made a little bit ago, that, we need to have a broader scope of how people have looked at this property and seen how it could be developed before we can say, hey, do we need to make a change here? And, from where I sit, I don't think we don't have enough information about how this property has been looked at to be used in different ways that would conform to the way it's zoned today.
And once again, we wouldn't be making a change, we would be making an accommodation or an exception. That's what we're being asked to approve. So.
If I might, this may be out of our scope of work, but are we the last line of defense? Is there somewhere else that someone could be pointed, or these folks could be pointed to address this?
So they could definitely go to the planning commission. They could submit an application to get the property rezoned. Just because staff is maybe not recommending it does not mean that they can't apply. And also, we do allow, the residential is allowed in the zone district. It's just required to be attached with commercial unless they are 5 or more attached dwelling units. So if they did if they constructed a 5-unit building, they could all be residential, and that would be an allowed use in the zone district.
Okay.
Just a quick clarification on that. The 2 adjacent lots that they're talking about, those are zoned MDR, which permits you to have a 2-family. So obviously the most, appropriate rezoning in this case would be to MDR. That would give them the 2-family, and then.
My zoning map isn't that zoomed in. Thank you, Trish. I can't get to that level of detail to see.
You can see the difference just quickly. The colors, the bright red on the other side of the road is a corridor mixed use. If you go across to the pink with the house that we were discussing, that is the neighborhood mixed use, and then the gray.
It's a weird color around here.
The grayish or whatever it is from this angle, it's a little different. That is the MDR, which permits duplexes. So that's something that can be brought to the planning commission, planning staff, and see where that goes.
Right. Trish, could you zoom that out real quick? I'm just curious how far that neighborhood mixed use goes. Okay.
Just picking that corner.
I just found it interesting that that fourplex next to it is part of it, but the other fourplex,
Yeah, we were just discussing that.
yeah, I don't know how that got,
Yeah, that's just another one in the list.
oops.
But
And it doesn't extend down to the salon, I guess, down at Ferris. Anyways, all right. Well, I'd be looking for a motion on this.
Like a motion to deny.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the application. Any other discussion?
Do we have findings of fact for the motion?
The finding of facts is, basically, I'm hanging on the first one there with, can it be reasonably used for its permitted use? And I believe it can be. Do I necessarily agree with doing this? But we're locked. We don't have the ability. We cannot rezone. We cannot do anything but act on the rules that are in front of us. So unfortunately, this is where I'm heading, and it sounds like I have support, so.
And John, do you want to run through the rest of the questions too, just so Vince gets everything he possibly can?
Right. So, is the variance needed due to unique circumstances and conditions? I don't think it is, because it can be used for other things without the narrowness or anything, topography, et cetera, coming into play. Will the proposed use alter the essential character of the neighborhood? I would say no. And then, did the current property owner do something to create this variance? And I would say no. You okay over there, Vince?
Yes, I'm okay. You need all in the right column to approve. You need only one in the left column to deny. I
Correct.
heard your basis for findings would be that the current owner didn't do anything to create the need for the variance. Is that what I heard?
Correct.
I have the information I need. Thanks.
All right, we have a motion, we have support, we have findings of fact. I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
All right, the motion is to deny Bedard,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Shea,
no,
Sorick.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
All right. Difficult decisions. It is. And I know we'd love to be able to solve all of our problems in the city, but unfortunately, it's not really under our purview to do so. And our next item on our agenda would be the approval of the minutes from the June 23rd meeting. Any comments on those?
No.
No? All right, then we'll do a quick voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. All right, the minutes are approved. Now, item number 6, election of officers for the next year, chair and vice chair. I guess we are now open for nominations at this time.
I'm in support of keeping the existing arrangement, so I guess I would say Dan for chair, and his sidekick to the right there is vice.
Is that one at a time, or is it both?
I'm just throwing them out there.
You
You
can-
can
you
section
can-
them up the way you want.
You can make a
nomination.
nomination. Sounds like you've got nominated a chair and a vice chair.
I have not heard any seconds yet.
I second that.
All right.
Quickly
I was gonna
seconded.
say, we guys sleeping at the switch or what?
I think Devon's was not me, not me.
I thought we had all agreed that we were gonna do Brad.
I did have a conversation with Brad this morning, and
How much did he pay you to keep him off the?
he gave me his proxy vote.
But nobody has to tell him that he wasn't elected. I think.
Unless he's watching.
Okay.
I doubt that. Anyways, yeah, he mentioned he would be open to a position of vice, but not yet ready for a chair position. So, other nominations.
I make a motion that for our next meeting, we put Brad's name in the center.
there you
That's
go.
with that.
Valerie, gotta
Can I get seconds and thirds on that?
I
please?
would support that, but we got to take care of the first motion,
I think
please.
we're pretty quiet on that, so we need to move for the motion to vote.
Yeah.
vote.
All right, and the motion is, I as chair, thank you very much. I appreciate your confidence in me, so. David has my full confidence if I am not here.
You started to take things over earlier, so.
So I know, he's
ready.
ready, he's practiced, so, so I will go with that, and, we'll go a voice vote on that, so all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you, and any opposed? None.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and our next meeting is August 25th, 2022. Do we have any applications?
Not yet.
Not yet,
Not
of
yet.
course, yet. And then I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, and we are standing adjourned without any opposition. Thank you.